Hi, welcome to this episode of Dairy TV. At Dairy TV, we bring you all things dairy. And what are we discussing today? Maize silage. This is a very important topic for any one of you who is doing dairy. Before I continue, I'd like to remind you to hit the subscribe button. Now, what are we looking at on the issue of maize silage? We have seen that there are people who do silage very well, and there are others who don't get it right. So we want to look at what goes wrong in the whole issue of silage making. And to be able to discuss that in a very clear way, we'll be looking at the different stages where silage could go wrong. And there are three parts to this. The first one is at the farm level. That is at the production stage. We shall be looking at the discussions around that. What should we do? What should we not do? The second stage is after harvesting. That stage, we can call it the processing stage of silage. It is between the point at which silage is ready for harvesting and the point at which silage is presented to the cow for feeding. So the final stage, we'll be looking at what could go wrong just before the cow feeds on the silage. I'd like you to notice that we have very many ways of determining the quality of silage. You can look at it, we can take it to the lab, we can do all those things. But the real proper guide as to what quality of silage we got is the cow that feeds on that silage. So we want the cow to demonstrate that they have eaten or they have fed on a high quality silage based on the production that the cow gives, how the body condition improves, and generally how the well-being of the cow improves as a result of feeding on maize silage. Before we go into production, I would like us to look at the trends. What are we observing around the subject of maize silage? Now, you need to look at the kind of cows that we've been having for the last about 3-4 decades. There has been a lot of improvement in the genetics of the cows. Breeders have done a good job. We are not sure whether the people who are feeding have also done an equally good job. So what we have ended up with is genetically improved cows, but not having a matching feed that can be able to give us full value or near full value of the genetics that we have improved. So farmers are becoming increasingly aware that they need to improve the feeding regimes of their cows so that they can harvest or make full return from the improved genetics in their cows. So what are we observing? First of all, we see more and more smallholders beginning to introduce silage into their ration. They have been feeding napier or they have been feeding grasses. They are not shifting, but we see now silage coming into the diet as an additional fodder to add energy and starch into the diet. We are also seeing that in the sector, there are companies that are emerging, producing silage in large volumes, and then packing it and presenting it for sale. That was not happening 5-6 years ago, but now it's happening. So a farmer who does not have silage on their farms have now a chance to go and purchase it from the store. We are also seeing cooperatives beginning to organize themselves to source for silage collectively for their farmers. So a cooperative approaches a commercial fodder producer and agrees, this is how much silage we need. And then they agree, can you produce that silage for us? We are beginning to see that. And that comes in to solve a lot of problems of many farmers having to procure for themselves individually and then having one cooperative aggregating that and signing a contract with the supplier. What else are we seeing? We are seeing smallholder farmers beginning to develop bunkers, small tanks, tubes, and putting silage on their own, preserving on their own. Well, some of them may not have silage enough to carry them through the whole year, but that we are beginning to see more and more of that, of having a small bunker here and there among the smallholders, so that they can be able to feed silage from their own farms. Those are things that we are beginning to see. And now all those things have an implication on what will happen finally when silage gets to the cow. Do we finally get the right quality of the silage? And you're going to be checking where do things go wrong, right? From production all the way to where the cow is about to feed on that silage. We are going into a break, and when we come back, we shall now be looking at production level. What are the best practices at the production level and what goes wrong?
For a long time, Kenya Dairy Board has been conducting testing services without having a good infrastructure, to provide for the accurate testing facilities as such. So for a period of time, we've been working to set up an infrastructure that can be able to support the dairy industry to achieve its forerun goal of providing safety and quality of milk and meat products. The key tests that we do, basically they are physical tests to determine the acceptability of milk and milk products. We are able to test for butterfat. We're able to test for acidity. We're able to test for other added constituents of milk and milk products, which basically give an indication of how the milk is in terms of its quality. Over and above that, those are some of the tests that provide a direct interface between the user and the producer, who's the farmer. Over and above that, we also do other tests, which are chemical tests, basically to know how the nature of the milk in terms of its chemistry is concerned, because that is key, because it provides a framework where you can be able to know whether that milk is safe for use depending on its chemical constituents. We are also able to do the microbiology analysis to be able to know what are the constituents of the milk in terms of the microorganisms that exist, so that we can be able to know how safe is that milk and milk products. The industry needs to understand this because it's important, because it affects the nature of how they consume their milk and milk products. If the milk is not safe, then chances are that they'll get some problems which they'll not be able to associate with, and the National Dairy Regulatory Laboratory of Kenya Dairy Board provides that infrastructure for those services to be provided to them.
Welcome back. We now continue discussing what goes wrong in the process of silage at the farm level. There are both three types of farmers in this case. There's that farmer who grows and makes their own silage. There's another farmer who grows part of their silage, but then buys the rest of the silage in the course of the year. And there's that farmer who buys all the silage they need for their farm because they can afford it and the price at their farm allows them to do that. But then for all these categories of farmers, as long as you are a user of silage, we are all looking at one thing, that we can get a high quality silage. And what does that mean, high quality? That the land gives you a high yield. Some people are getting 16 tons, 18 tons in an acre, 15 tons, but we still have people who are getting below 10 tons an acre. But again, you're also looking at quality, getting the high levels of energy, of starch, so that silage in the diet plays the role of silage as intended. Instead of getting silage that is low on starch, low on energy, it is not digestible, and then you lose the value of the silage that you grew on your own farm, where you could have grown something else, or silage that you bought with your money, which could have bought something else, like minerals or dairy meal or whatever it is. So we are all looking for a good quality silage. So where does it all begin? At the production level, this is where things can go wrong. And I would like us to look at several things here at the production level. First of all is a soil. How well do you understand your soil? And is it that kind of a soil or agroecological climate that favors the growing of maize? Or is it a region where the soils no longer support the growing of maize? Maybe that's why we are getting farmers harvesting 4 tons of silage in an acre, which is too low, when someone else is getting 4 times that, 16 tons of silage within the same country, different regions. So how is the soil? That we always encourage farmers to check that by taking their soil to the lab and having to check what is missing in that soil and what needs to be added so that the soil can support that crop. In the event that your soil can support a maize crop, then it's a good idea to think about what else can I grow instead of putting silage here, getting 4 tons, but after putting all the inputs required, and then I lose my money. It's not a bad idea to say, maybe my land can support maybe another forage protein, can support Napier, can support Desmodium or Lucerne. then you don't have to do with maize. You can then plan your diets either without silage or have to buy silage and plant something else that your farm can be able to support. So that is if the soil is irredeemable. It cannot be corrected to support the growing of maize. Then two, when the soil is checked, there are chances where fertilizer can actually be able to slowly correct the condition of the soil. Whether it's coming from manure or from commercial fertilizers, whatever it is, the people who do soil analysis are able to advise you on what to do, whether to abandon or to slowly improve the soil, acidity, or other characteristics of the soil. But then let's go to the other parts of what determines the production level. The management of the crop when it is a farm goes beyond the soil. It is the seed. Which seed did you grow? And where did you buy it from? Where was it developed to be grown? There are some seeds that are developed for a certain context. If you talk to seed experts or seed companies, they're going to tell you this variety is suitable for this area, and you cannot therefore take that variety to another area and expect it to respond the same way as it would respond for the area where it was developed for. So the seed selection is very important. You have to be sure that you got the right seed for your area and you have been given all the requirements for planting that particular seed. Then we go to the issue of land preparation. How did you prepare your land? We have a lot of practices in land preparation, and we have some bad practices where the soil is exposed, it loses moisture, and therefore the soil value reduces, and it's not as though the soil was suitable for maize silage production, a lot of moisture is lost because of exposing due to the method of land preparation that is used. There has been a lot of discussion between the issue of chisel plowing and disc plowing, and experts say that any method of tillage that exposes soil is actually reducing the ability of your soil to support a good crop. So you need to discuss very carefully with the people who are doing your land preparation, that contractor who you hire, what kind of tilling are they doing, because that will determine your productivity. Then we go to the matter of planting. How do we plant? Planting is about spacing. What kind of spacing are you doing? Now, spacing can be in two ways. We can be talking about spacing between one row and the other, or spacing between one plant and the other within a row. So we have farmers who are doing 90 by 30 centimeters. We have some farmers doing 75 by 25 centimeters. And we still have farmers doing a narrower spacing because their lands are able to support that. They have the water, they have the fertilizer, and their soil is able to support that kind of plant population when the spacing is narrow. So for you to be able to have a high crop in terms of production, yield, and quality, then we need to have more crops in a given 1 meter square, say, or given space. That would mean that to be able to fit more crop in a small space, then we need to have narrower spacing. But is it all farms that can be able to support narrow spacing? We need to look at that. So farmers who get higher production per acre are farmers who have had narrow spaces between plant and the other, or between one row and the other. But other farmers who have much lower yield are farmers who have wider spacing, and that could be informed by the fact that their soil cannot support a high plant population. So they have to space a bit wider so that the soil nutrition is enough to support the number of crops within that space. So we shall continue discussing the issues of production, but I would like us to, first of all, think about those three: the issue of soil, the issue of seed, and the issue of spacing. And now we are moving to the management of that crop. Because those three things, if they go wrong, then there's no way you can be able to reverse the bad effects of getting it wrong on seed, soil, and spacing when the crop is already now growing. We are also saying that in this farm, you have been able to determine how much water from the rain or from irrigation you can be able to get so that your crop does not fail along the way. Perhaps that is why banks are saying that for us to give you money to make a commercial production of silage, you need to assure us that you have some form of irrigation, because the rain-fed system might fail you and then we end up not getting our money back. So it's giving an assurance that besides the soil being okay, the seed being okay, having done proper spacing, that we have water to support that crop so that we get a proper yield that we are looking for and yield also comes with quality. Let's talk about the management. What does that mean? Now we have to discuss the issue of fertilization. We have to talk about the issue of pest control and also weeding. The crop is now growing. It has started off well. Observe the fertilization that comes with growing. There are some farmers who are saying that I don't like to do my phosphate fertilizers at the time of planting. I would like to do it when the maize emerges. Farmers have their own experiences. Sometimes they have learned their lessons and they like to do what they have seen working. So we don't like to prescribe and say, put fertilizer on your growing. I think it's also good to observe what kind of experiences farmers have had. There are those who've got good results by putting the fertilizer, not at planting, but after about 3 weeks. Then the top dressing that comes much later, 1-2 months after when the crop has already emerged. And then the issue of pests. We have had a very big threat on fall armyworms. How do you deal with this? If you talk to your advisor on agronomy, pest control, they're going to tell you which is the latest chemical that they're using to deal with that. This is a big threat, because if you have armyworm, then most likely if you don't do something, you lose your crop, or you get a very weak crop in the end, which then you don't get back your value. And then we have weeding. Weeding can only be dealt with either ahead of growing, where you ensure that you're planting on a weed-free land area or weed-free space, and then weeds are going to emerge. If the soil is going to be fertile, or you've put manure from the farm, chances are that weeds are going to emerge, whether you like it or not, because the soil has those seeds of weeds in it. So you have to control weeds when the maize is at the early stages. Otherwise, when the maize is now taller, much taller, then you have a problem, because you'll not be able to do it quite easily when you're weeding, whether you're doing it manually or you're doing it in other mechanical methods. So what then happens when we have not observed proper management? Look at this maize that I'm holding here. A farmer who gets 16 tons per acre of maize are probably getting a tall variety of maize, but also getting a bigger size of cob than this one, and another one, so that we are talking about double cobbing of an above average size of a cob. Some people like to call it corn. So this is what then forms the weight of this crop from the prop roots all the way to the tassel. But then, if the farmer gets these 2 cobs, then we are sure that out of the total weight of this crop, at least 70% of the quality of this maize crop will come from the cobs, this cob and the other cob which is supposed to be here. Then 20% will come from this stem, which at the time of harvesting will be a bit succulent, not too wet, but again not too dry, because you want to be harvesting at the right time. We shall be discussing harvesting later. But then we also look at the quality. How will quality be compromised? This is a delicate balance, because you're talking about having a tall variety that gives you biomass, so you have more yield per acre. But then you have another issue. When it is again too tall, we have a huge part from the root to up to near middle, where we have very difficult fibers for the cows to digest. So again, they begin to affect quality. So we get more quantity, but we have an issue with quality. For a country where cows are hungry and we need more feed, farmers would say, okay, let me have more biomass, and then I worry less about quality. But as we look at improvement, it's always good to know that when we have tall varieties, we are likely to have some waste, because we have materials or fibers that the cow's digestive system may not digest. But then we have a poorly managed variety. This happens to be a field where they are all mixed in, because it's rain-fed and different crops came out differently. This is a very small cob. If you look at it, it perhaps didn't actually develop properly, didn't mature. So if you have a farm producing this size, perhaps because the soil was not right, the seed was not right, or the spacing was not good, or too crowded, something went wrong, or this particular crop was affected by pest, then you have this kind of cob, you can be sure that you can't get more than maybe 6 tons per acre. You have much less than that. And then the amount of starch in this crop is much less, because remember, we are getting starch from the grains. How much grains are we getting here? These grains are all milky stage, and the whole field is ready for harvesting, but we have all in milk. You can see it's more sugar and perhaps very little of starch. So here you have a maize silage that gives you a lot of sugar, because I can see that the stem is still very succulent. But you intended to give maize silage to the cows so that they can be able to benefit from the starch that comes with a good crop of maize silage. So we have no starch here. So what's actually the difference between the farmer who fed the maize tova, which is the maize crop without the corn, and the farmer who feeds the maize crop with a very underdeveloped corn? So we have to be very careful, because really the biggest earning we get it from getting a healthy crop that has good maize, good corn or good cob, preferably double cobbing. Some are even getting triple cobbing. You have this cob, and one more. And then we have also to avoid a situation whereby we have very little cob coming, and therefore losing on the mix of the starch and the sugar. We do not want to have high sugar levels at the expense of starch, which is basically the best profile for a maize silage feed. So this brings us to the end of this section of maize silaging at the farm level. Remember, you cannot copy the practice of another person. They could be having a different soil, a different weather from you. Don't copy the seed, don't copy the spacing. Be sure that you do the right thing at your own farm so that you can get the best you can from maize silage. So in the next stages, we'll be talking about harvesting onwards, from harvesting to chopping to ensiling. So be sure to join us in the next stages. About land preparation, we have done another video on the same channel. Please look out for it so that you see which are the best ways to prepare your land for maize. Do not forget to hit the subscribe button so that you can continue receiving this information from this channel.